From trick-or-treating to crypto trading, this is a super exciting and scary time of year. Bitcoin is happening all across the world in real land and cyber land, and it's happening somewhere near you. It's happening both with and against the promises and the warnings of our fullest imaginations and the imaginations of others. So this season, in All Hallows season, while we're carving pumpkins into lanterns, we wish we could get back to the past or back to the future, because let it be a real game with fake money or now distractions with real money, Bitcoin has barely reached 1% of its full potential. And that's not just 1 million, but we're talking to the race to the trillions. So what will it look like for Bitcoin to reach the $1 million Bitcoin? Might it be easier actually for the masses to think about Bitcoin in terms of millibits or bits? And how many Bitcoin jack-o'-lanterns will you see tonight? Let's discuss. Hey everybody, I'm Gary Palmer Jr., you're you, and together, welcome Minting Coins. So thanks for being here, thanks for checking out the news. We're going to be going over a bunch of cool photos, some really interesting charts and graphs talking about the full potential of where Bitcoin is going. And we're going to be going over this together, connecting these dots and figuring out what's happening in the world. So first things first, if you enjoy this information, hit that like button. Upvote this on Steemit. It really is very encouraging to read your comments below. If you are not able to donate or exchange anything financially or with that exchange of value in this decentralized blockchain world, then at the very least, I really encourage you to leave comments and to participate with the information that we're talking about, because getting your feedback and engaging with you online really helps with the motivation, really helps in terms of the connection, and really helps in terms of building this information that's focused on news, that's focused on actually what's happening, and isn't just a distraction about how someone can make a quick buck. So thanks for sticking around and thanks for going over this information. With that being said, let's dive into the market, take a peek at the news, what's happening in the world, and let's discuss. So starting over here at coinmarketcap.com, Bitcoin just keeps on booming. Bitcoin, we were talking at 57% yesterday. The BTC dominance is 58.3%. Total market capitalization swelling up $182 billion. And I guess more of a lower 24-hour volume at $3.8 billion. Not as low as it could be, but it's sort of a new low of that range of how much we've seen, generally speaking, on the 24-hour trading. So Bitcoin itself still over that 0.1 trillion market capitalization per Bitcoin price, $6,390, increasing another 5% in the past 24 hours. At the same time, Bitcoin Cash sort of losing steam and trailing off from its position. Ethereum, a lot of these coins on average more or less about 1%. Litecoin, Dash, Neo, all of these other happenings into space. Cardano, relatively very strong, still sticking where it has been. It's going to be really interesting what comes out of that, and if any information is going to be coming out of Hong Kong with the ETC summit that may have some connected information then in November. And yeah, a lot of people not feeling good about Omizigo, but at the same time, recognizing that there's huge potential what's happening. The Omizigo price has relatively been staying the same, but steadily decreasing at the same time, down from where it was at that $10, $11, $12 mark plus, but really has been falling even further relative to that Bitcoin price. People haven't been feeling good about that. Let's see where Zen is after talking about Zen yesterday. It looks like we might have fallen off that first page, but just keep in mind, we saw the Zen Cash in yesterday's video. Where are we? Oh, it says ranked here number 99, but Zen actually down 12% in the past 24 hours, $17.48. For 42 Zen, you can run one of those secure Zen nodes, and you could be minting new Zen on a monthly, on a daily or a monthly basis. So it's going to be really interesting to see more and more of these proof of stake or service nodes, these secure nodes that are going to be providing additional services to the network simply by existing and holding a little bit of tokens. It's a way of increasing the value, increasing the revenue, increasing the passive income that's possible for you and possible for a lot of people at this stage of the game. Because, you know, if, for example, Zen was to 10x and this was $170 a piece instead of $17 a piece, then it's just going to be significantly more money for anybody to own one secure node. Let alone that some people having the potential of owning, you know, multiples and, you know, maybe 5 or 10 or, you know, some whales could own 100 of these secure nodes and just be generating passive income forever into the future as this token continues to gain steam, as sort of we're expecting it will, simply because the community is rather strong and passionate and dedicated for the success of this project and the features of the Zencash coin. Really interesting to see what's happening with that, and overall in a market trend, see more and more tokens, more and more digital assets go in the way of, you know, what Dash really started, that we saw first, and that Dash really pioneered, which was having 1,000 Dash for a master node and allowing people to mint new coins with these existing tokens, with these existing coins. And you know, and this is one of the ways, one of the possibilities, one of the reasons that together everyone is minting coins. And then, you know, along that line and thinking that in the holiday season, we're probably going to see some Martys and some Doc Browns out there walking around. Maybe one of them will be carrying a Bitcoin symbol, just wishing that they can go back in time. Maybe not to 1986 or 1985, but maybe the 2009 or 2010 when Bitcoin was a lot more affordable. Still would have been difficult to get, but I suppose you could have been someone who could have delivered a couple pizzas and you know, and then walked away with 20,000 Bitcoin then, right? And we're looking at the Bitcoin price now at $6,000. People are looking back at the 3,000, at the 4,000, at the 5,000, and they're wondering, is 6,000 going to be a deal? On its way to 10,000 and beyond? Because with Bitcoin, because it's limited, as we were talking about yesterday, as we've been talking about from the very beginning, as NASDAQ is letting people know, there's only never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoins. And so as more and more people push their wealth into Bitcoin, push their wealth into the digital store of value that's trusted, borderless across the entire world, these have the potential to increase dramatically, as we're going to be seeing in the data in just a little bit. Oh, cool. So, yeah, it is Halloween. Happy Halloween, trick or treat. I hope you check us out on Instagram. This is us over here on Instagram with our Bitcoin jack-o'-lantern that we carved last night. Come follow us and come see what we're doing over on Instagram, because we're really getting excited about creating content over there and creating images over there. And it's going to be really, really fun in terms of that sort of experience. But this was really fun. And so we're going to display this Bitcoin jack-o'-lantern out for all the trick-or-treaters tonight, raise some Bitcoin awareness. And at the same time, you know, we're wondering how many of these we're going to see around, and let us know if you see any in your neighborhood, because it's definitely, you know, definitely fun when we spot it and people go, "What is that?" It's a sideways ghost. And then here are some other ones out there. There's a lot of people in the Halloween spirit, and this sort of looks like a 13. Dubs is a 13 and a Bitcoin symbol. Here are a couple other ones. This one is nicely carved. Both of these nicely carved. This perfect heart over here I thought was really awesome. We have this Bitcoin with the bats, super fancy. And then you know, the Bitcoin dad and the kids. So it's just really fun. It's just a way to show the Bitcoin spirit. It's a way to bring and raise Bitcoin awareness. And yeah, so did you carve a Bitcoin jack-o'-lantern? You know, submit a photo or share your photos. It's really, you know, a lot of fun, and it's always fun to have this sort of stuff to talk about. And here's this carving too. So you got the roller coaster Bitcoin guy. And so a lot of people have been talking about Bitcoin and the supply being limited. And a lot of people, when we're talking about Bitcoin and blockchain technology to begin with, they can bring up monopoly and they can bring up Rule 11 and monopoly. And we've talked about Rule 11 before. There should be a whole book called Rule 11. And so Rule 11 is, what if the bank runs out of money in monopoly? Well, some players think that if the bank is bankrupt, that if it runs out of money, but in fact, the bank never goes bankrupt. To continue playing, use slips of paper to keep track of each player's banking transactions until the bank has enough paper money to operate again. So the banker may also issue new money on slips of ordinary paper. And it's really interesting because when this game was first created, banks were sort of on a gold standard, and there was to some way enough money for the banks to pay back all of that debt. And at some point, there wasn't enough money. And banks have been issuing, I guess, people's debts on pieces of paper and issuing new money on, as this says, ordinary slips of paper. And talk about the game of life. But that game was already taken, I suppose. But we have Monopoly here. And it's just really interesting to see how life imitates art, or how art imitates life. And how right in front of us is the information. I mean, this is a PhD course in global economics on this one little card that explains Rule 11. But this is something that no one learns in the high school. This is something that no one learns in college. This is something that is furthest from people's attention in terms of where people are being directed in their education and in society. But on the back of the children's game, buried past rule number 10 is rule number 11 that just lays it all out on the line and lets people know what's happening and what's going on. And that's really interesting. It's really fun. It's definitely interesting to talk about and to connect with the real world economics of what's happening. And then shifting to the news and going over the couple of headlines that we saw today, there's this Vietnamese university that plans to accept Bitcoin despite a central bank ban. And we're not going to go in depth into this article, but this is just to point out and to recognize that there's businesses all over the world that are just going to recognize at some point what they're being told by the regulators or what they're being told by the governments is not necessarily either true and or in their businesses and their communities and their personal best interests. And that there's a lot of potential and that there's a lot of upside and that the risk of terrorism and money laundering is actually rather low because people are simply looking to exchange their wealth, exchange their value into a unit that they can trust is going to maintain that value, and then maybe hold on to it, but then also maybe spend it. And maybe they're not spending it on cups of coffee, but they're sometimes at some point purchasing, nice things that are not as cheap as a cup of coffee, like a computer or maybe a car, or in some cases maybe a house. And so even when we have these bans, even when we have these restrictions, we're reaching this point of mainstream awareness and mainstream adoption where more and more people are recognizing the utility of the Bitcoin, the rarity of the Bitcoin, and the promise and the opportunity of what it means to have just one Bitcoin. And so, this is something to recognize, something to be aware of more and more. We're going to see this, and then further and further down the line, we're going to recognize how far we are beyond past the tipping points where Bitcoin is going to become an everyday way of life, and people are going to have to pivot and to shift and understanding how many bits something is worth, or how many millibits something is worth, or how many, bits or millibits things are valued in, as opposed to being valued in dollars or whatnot. Because valuing something in a Bitcoin is just going to get way out of hand. You're not going to talk about whole Bitcoins unless you're talking about something very, very expensive. Like maybe you'll purchase a house for a half a Bitcoin, or maybe you'll purchase a house for 0.1 Bitcoin. Instead of saying 1,000 millibits or 100 millibits, perhaps. And this is where we're being led to, where the man wakes up in a coma, and the nurse says, "Sir, you've been in a coma. It's 2025." I guess that would put us 2 more halvings into the future. So each Bitcoin 10 minutes, you probably get, what would you get, like 1.5 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. And so the person says, how many dollars per Bitcoin? The nurse says, what is $1? And then she says, your bill is 31 bits. It's not even millibits, 31 bits, which would be either really, really expensive or really, really affordable, depending on how much a Bitcoin is. If Bitcoin is $1 million, then 31 millibits would be $31. But if a Bitcoin was $1 trillion, then 31 millibits would be like thousands, right? And we really don't know what's going to happen if Bitcoin is going to go to 0 or if Bitcoin is going to go to $1 trillion. And this brings us to the main article for today over here at cointelegraph.com, where we have Bitcoin being recognized by experts as only reaching not even 1% of its true potential. And we've talked about how the number of people the number of people in the world who own Bitcoin is essentially 0. It's 0.004 rounded down. It's just 0% of the world owns Bitcoin. So if you own any Bitcoin, you are so much further ahead than the majority of the world. But it's not just the number of people that have Bitcoin, but it's also how much money is put into Bitcoin. Here's another example where someone is asking for a Big Mac and a large fries and a Diet Coke, and the person says, "Sure, that'll be 12 bits." Like how much is that bit worth? How much is that worth? How is that relationship to dollars? And so in the mindset of the psychology, when people are talking about to the moon and people are talking about the Bitcoin full potential, Bitcoin could be $100,000, which would be unbelievable. It could be $1 million, which people keep on talking about. Bitcoin could be 10 million or $1 trillion, depending on how much money goes into it and how much faith and value that utility is providing. But generally speaking, in the hypothetical world that people are thinking about one Bitcoin being worth $1 million of value. And so 1 bit would be worth, in this case, $1, which would be 1/millionth of a Bitcoin. And a Satoshi would be worth 1 US cent. And so this article, we're not going to go through all the details here, but it talks about how Bitcoin is still tiny. And then when you compare how much Bitcoin is in the world and how much money is into Bitcoin versus all the dollars and the supply of dollars versus the gold and how much gold there is, that Bitcoin is only worth about 1% the value of its 2 main competitors, being the dollar and gold. And so it's really a race of how much of this money, which is inflationary, of the US dollars and even the gold, which is a manipulated amount, to manipulated sort of supply to some degree. It's difficult to really quantify how much gold there is, how much real gold there is. There's just advantages and disadvantages of gold versus cryptocurrencies. But nevertheless, that the value in the gold and the value in the dollar is going to be racing into Bitcoin, and then racing the total market capitalization of Bitcoin to the $1 trillion mark. And so on this graph here, this is where we are now, where we're actually above this point right here, where the current market capitalization is over $100 billion, and our per Bitcoin price is $6,000. That makes 1 millibit about $6, and then 1 bit of a 1 bit unit would be just about a penny. And so along this path, as we get exponentially higher and higher, where we reach 2.5% of gold or 5% of gold, or 5% of the US dollar, then you could see how just going from 1% to 5% increases the market capitalization to 10x, or almost 7-8x here, to 625 billion, which would give us a per Bitcoin price of $37,000. Or if it was 5% gold, you could say $25,000. So when we're hearing about these other predictions about Bitcoin reaching $27,000, that $27,000 is in between the 5% market capitalization of all of the gold in the world and 5% market capitalization of the US dollar. So that $27,000 in the next 10 to 12 months is very, very reasonable. And it could be actually sort of underestimating the full potential. Because if things were to escalate rapidly, or if a lot of these experts are right and the Bitcoin price does continue to increase exponentially, especially as we get closer and closer to the halving in 2020, us reaching that 10% instead of the 5% mark and reaching the $1 trillion and $60,000 per Bitcoin is entirely reasonable, entirely in the realm of possibility, as more and more people come to accept Bitcoin, as Bitcoin goes more and more mainstream, as the legalization of Bitcoin and the regulators of Bitcoin are more and more accepting of the Bitcoin and blockchain technology, as more and more the institutional investors and the hedge funds are creating financial vehicles and additional doorways and portals, different ways that people can convert other types of money into Bitcoin and blockchain money. And that's going to swell into the overall blockchain capitalization as there's that demand for those organizations to hold onto those units of Bitcoin. It's a giant snowball that's rolling down the hill, but instead of this snowball being made of snow, this snowball is made of like titanium and diamonds. And at some point, this snowball is going to get to the bottom of the hill, where essentially there's no more, Bitcoin to add onto it. And then, at that point, the miners are just operating off of fees. But at that point, no one's going to be able to stop this giant, Bitcoin snowball, just because of the density of how much value is going to be built up and into the demand of this very particular blockchain technology. So, let's see here. So so there's a second graph here you can go check out. So then we talk about, down here in this very bottom part, I guess where we just were, you see this little dot all the way down here? This is where we were at the 10% market capitalization. And so up here is a 25%. And so that's much, much higher when you zoom out, right? This whole unit here is way zoomed in to the very, very beginning of what's happening and what's going on. This is the very, very beginning of Bitcoin and the market capitalization of Bitcoin. And so when we zoom out into the grand scale of things, you have this whole little section over here, right? You have this whole little section over here where, which is what we were just talking about. And so then when we zoom out, you got 25% of the gold value at the very bottom. You have the 50% of the gold value right above that. You have the 50% of the dollar total market capitalization. And if we go right between the 50% of the gold and the 50% of the US dollar, and that puts us at a per Bitcoin price of about $250,000 per Bitcoin. So it just really, really interesting. And so it doesn't have to come 100%, the 50% of the US dollar doesn't have to come from just a dollar, right? So it could be some gold, it could be some dollar, it could be some stocks, it could be some derivatives, but it's just about that amount of money increasing the space, because this is just comparing the gold and dollar. There's quadrillions and quadrillions of money and value from other places that could come into the Bitcoin space. And so up here we have the parity with the US dollar, and then just above that we have the race to the million, which would be the market capitalization of 16.6 trillion. And so the total market capitalization of Bitcoin alone is $16.6 trillion. Then the price of each Bitcoin would be worth $1 million. 1 millibit would be worth $1,000, and 1 bit would be worth $1. And just again, to put this into perspective, this 1 millibit today is $6. And so for this $6 to 10x to 60 to 10x again to 600, I mean, we see that happen all the time in the smaller markets, and on a grand scale, it's definitely possible that this could happen for something as large as Bitcoin. Yeah, so really interesting. So come check out these graphs. And come check out the data that this is talking about. We'll probably post some of these on Instagram and maybe on Facebook just to bring more awareness and more attention to what's happening there. Make sure you come check us out over at Instagram and follow us. Check out some of the photos. We're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. We're always putting out information, sharing news to share with the world and to share with you, just to keep that conversation going, to keep the awareness going. Also, come check us out at mintingcoins.com. Feel free to make a membership at mintingcoins.com. And then if you want a free membership, just contact us through the contact form after you sign up, and then ask us for that free membership. If you're one of the first 500 or so participants in the community, we can definitely upgrade you for free and just help get more information to more people, so people can continue owning their own responsibility, making their own decisions, and then sharing that information with other people to increase current cryptocurrency, Bitcoin awareness and adoption for as many people as possible before this rocket ship really starts to take off. It's really important that as many people in your community know about Bitcoin, know about blockchain technology, and have a wallet, have a little bit of Bitcoin in there. Have just a 20th or a 100th of the amount of a Bitcoin. That little bit would be a big step in terms of helping people understand how this works. And I would love to know your stories of maybe you helping someone get a Bitcoin wallet, maybe you helping someone receive their first transaction, and then maybe just letting us know what was that like, what was easy about it, what was difficult about it, and maybe we can create some content to maybe help facilitate those sort of actions in the world. All right, so we have a lot of new content on the way, new information to share with you. Tap that like button, help other people find this. If you are not able to donate to help the channel, to help keep on bringing this information to you, become a member at mintingcoins.com. Please comment and let us know what you think, because just commenting is incredible energy that really keeps us going and really is a way to participate and give back to the community. And so until next time, I'm glad that together we are minting coins.